Marketing starts at your client, not at your accomplishments. No one's impressed that you won a mock trial in 1987. It doesn't matter if you're interesting. It matters if you answer their questions clearly. People don't buy attorneys based on their personality. They choose their attorneys based on a desired result. Sell people what they want, give them what they need, and you'll keep them for a lot longer. Don't discount the opportunity to speak into what you think is nothingness and know that it will come back to you in dividends over time.
Sharp strategies, sweet success.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. You're listening to Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success. I'm your host, Tiffany Swidensky. Today, we're talking with Dennis Meador, and I think I met Dennis on LinkedIn, and This was my first time meeting with him, talking with him. That's not over messages or email. So, really appreciate Dennis coming on the podcast. And for my listeners who can't tell, I am not in my studio today. I'm actually remote from the Great Legal Marketing offices in Fairfax. They're hosting a small mastermind today, so I wanted to come out and attend. But thank you so much for Dennis for being with me in my remote podcast. And I'll let him finish out his introduction so you guys can learn more about him.
Sure thing. So I think actually, Tiffany, you and me started off as frenemies because we had a couple like back and forth conversations. It wasn't really but it was definitely like, no. And I love that. I love when I meet people online that can have hey, we don't agree, but that's okay. Like there's a little friction, but we can still feel each other out and kind of see what happens from here. So I think over the last 6-7 months, it's gone from like friction in the comments of other people to like commenting and having sort of a LinkedIn friendship directly. So I'm happy for that. That's the type of thing that LinkedIn cultivates. Myself, I have been in marketing for 30 years. I've worked with primarily the professional white-collar industry for over 20. Started with attorneys. I'd say probably 75% of that time, 75% plus has been focused on working with attorneys. So really been in the trenches with legal marketing for the majority of my career. I've been an entrepreneur the majority of my career since my early 20s, really started when I was a young teenager, but like in a more official capacity early in my career. And so about 2 years ago, I started the Legal Podcast Network, really was born out of conversations that I was having with attorneys with the old partnership that I had where we were doing SEO for lawyers. And I started getting the question fairly often, do you do anything with podcasts? Do you do anything with podcasts? And went to my then partner, was like, hey man, like if we create a podcast program for lawyers, I think they'll like it. He wanted to create more of an answering service. He thought that was a bigger need. So we kind of went that route for a while. But then December of 23, my 5-year contract with him, he decided not to renew, which released me and gave me the opportunity to launch this. And here we are, not quite 2 years later. We have over 200 shows that we produce, over 300 episodes monthly, and we have about 60-something people on the team. We just did a big hire, so we might even be at 70 people on the team. So we're growing, we're seeing a lot, and what we've really focused on is not being a podcast production company. We've actually taken podcasting and put it at the center of authentic branding, and we've built an ecosystem around it. So we get them into podcast. We use that podcast to create content for social media, for their website. We package that content into shorter videos, obviously full video. We have a channel, 2 streaming television channels that we're launching within about the next 30 days. We have a guest matching service that we have in beta that we have a few of our clients on. So really what we wanted to do is create a system where someone could come in, sit down for an hour to 2 hours every 1 to 4 months. And by doing so, we can then take authentic, real content and use it on behalf of our clients. And we've seen a lot of success. So we have a lot of agencies that actually send us their clients use us for the tech stack. We send it back to the agencies, and then they do the dissemination according to what they want. So that's what I'm doing. That's what we've been up to. And you see me mostly just goofing around on LinkedIn, kind of slightly irritating people, having fun with it. But I've just done this stuff way too long to be serious about any of it. So yeah, happy to be here.
It's always nice to talk to somebody who's been in the legal marketing space for a while, because I have too. I here at Great Legal Marketing, I think I started with them back in 2015. It's a bigger industry than you think, and then also small at the same time. And you do tend to meet people and get to know, the same faces, same events, and it's fun. I really enjoy it. So my question for you, just because you've been in the legal space for a while, and without saying AI, without saying the obvious answer, like, what do you think has changed? Like, what has changed in the questions the attorneys are asking you? What's changed about the marketing, or, something else that is just in the time you've spent in this industry, has evolved?
Well, it used to be. So what's changed is commoditization. So it used to be an industry where when I started 20 something years ago, and even when people were first getting on the internet, it was just about being found, being there. But then because it is a competitive industry, and especially it's a profitable industry for the most part, people were willing to go, depending on the case, the issue, whatever, they're willing to drive, 8 hours to go meet with somebody for a possible case, in certain types of law. So when the internet came in and it started listing people, who's local to you, who's helpful, then that 10 miles became 20 miles, that 20 miles became 50 miles, that 10 attorneys became 200 attorneys, became, several hundred attorneys. And so attorneys went from, hey, like I own my block, to being like everybody's fighting for everything everywhere. And so the last, I guess I'd say 7 or 8 years, I've spent a lot of time focusing on authority building for attorneys, not so much getting them found, but once they are found, because we've relatively figured out how to make sure that happens, what is going to set them apart that's going to allow them to have more clients, but more importantly, have the types of clients that they want more of that are actually going to pay them their fee. One thing you didn't used to hear 20 years ago, 15, even 10 years ago, is attorneys complaining about, yeah, I don't even want people to call me because I pick up my phone, and if they're not a referral, their first question is, how much is it? And that goes back to the commoditization. So that's been the big thing that I've seen in the industry, is it's gone from, just being a lawyer means you're going to do well and make money, just hanging up your shingle, to, oh, wow, wait a minute, I'm being compared to every single other attorney within a 50-mile radius. How do I differentiate myself in a way where people want to work with me and are willing to pay me what I'm worth?
I definitely try to instill that in the marketers who starting to work for these personal injury firms, or who are looking for a little training in that. And I always start with, you do realize you're getting into a very competitive industry. And there are sometimes, I'm talking to lawyers who they'll tell me their stated goal to be number one in Google, or to be at the top of local search. And then when I open up, Google and look at their marketplace, I see 3 or 4 names above theirs in the search that are people I know and law firms that I know who are doing quite a lot in marketing, including PR, including, showing up on podcasts. And it's just so unbelievably competitive. You have to be doing a lot to get noticed. And if you really want those results, those big, like, top of Google, most visibility results, you do have to do a lot of marketing. And so it's something I feel like people don't really appreciate. And it's when you're a business owner and you're in the weeds, you're running your business every day, sometimes you don't realize, what the landscape looks like. And so it's a lesson I'm definitely teaching the marketers. So you guys help attorneys not just produce their own podcast, but get on other people's podcasts. Is that it?
That's something we have in beta right now. That's correct. We're putting it as part of our overall ecosystem. We have the URL legalguest.com. And so we have to build that from scratch, a whole back end system, things like that. There's a couple of like podcast matching services that we were hoping to be able to white label and partner with, but we're really not. So we're white gloving over top of theirs while we're building our system. But yes, that is part of what we're doing. And the way that I really like to do my program is I believe in ecosystem. So if somebody comes and becomes my client and I produce their show, I'm going to give them everything else I do for free. So, they're going to be on the guest matching for free. They're on the streaming television channels for free. When we 10x'd our content delivery, we started off with 3 pieces per episode. We now do 30 pieces per episode. So when we went from our launch product to what we called the 2.0 product, we kept everybody the same price with the same thing. So I really believe in keeping them as a part of that. Now, if somebody comes to me and is like, I already have my own show, I just want to be on this or this, yeah, we'll have to do something a little bit different. But my goal, my desire is really to be able to take ownership front to back in what I'm doing for my clients so that when the results are or are not there, they either look at me and go, you need to do better, or they look at me and go, I'm never leaving you because you're doing great. So I like to own as much as I can of the process just because it holds me and the attorney accountable together.
I produce my own podcast, but nobody else's. I'm always recommending to my attorneys, like, hey, you should do a podcast. And not all of them are into the idea. Give me the language. Like, how would I convince one of my clients that they need to start a podcast?
Well, I think that you need to help them understand that there's a lot of purposes or different purposes for a podcast. So there is the kind of podcast like this where you and I are just talking, feeling out a conversation, hopefully coming up with some good gems. And those types of conversations can be good for attorneys. But what we did when we built this out, because I kind of asked myself the exact same question, like, okay, other than the cachet of having a podcast, what can a podcast do for an attorney? So the way we've positioned it is we build what we call authority podcasts, where we actually do it based off of their client profile, their ideal client profile, their jurisdictional profile, and their brand profile, which is really just their personality. We actually come up with the content. So they're a divorce attorney. We come up with, a series of 7 to 10 questions, and then we actually provide a host. So all the attorney has to do is just sit there and answer the same types of questions that they always answer. So we use that as a way to then cut in short videos and do all that. And here's what I tell them. If you're trying to impress your peers so that when you go to this bar meeting or this, conference, that they go, hey, Steve, love your podcast, learning a lot from it, then do what you and I are doing. But if you're trying to advance your marketing, because LLMs love FAQ. Do not forget that, folks. LLMs love FAQ. And so by doing these FAQ podcasts, the LLMs love them, GEO, AEO, whatever EIEIO you want to put on there. They love them. But on top of that, those are the videos that, like, in Google or in YouTube, you're going to get, instead of maybe 112 views on your video that is, 22 minutes or whatever of a podcast, you're going to get a couple thousand views on these shorter videos. They're just pushed out a lot more. So it allows you to kind of build a whole set of content besides just, hey, I was on a podcast for a half hour and I droned on about my golf game and a sandwich that I ate this weekend. Like, yeah, if that's what you're doing, you're probably not going to help your practice. But if you come into this understanding that the content can be structured or the questions can be structured to produce content that will then scale, that will then help drive traffic and people to you, both in the short term through social and in the long term through the search mechanisms, that is why you should be having a podcast.
And before we jumped on the show, and also before we jumped on the show, Dennis said he goes by DM, so I need to remember to say that.
That's okay. We're halfway home, so just keep going with Dennis.
Yeah, we're halfway there. I'm just like, I'm already in deep. So the way I do my podcast, I'm just doing free flow conversation. But, for a lot of people, when you're running a business and you're about to record a podcast in 10 minutes or 5 minutes, like, not everyone is just going to bounce around. I only talk about marketing on my show. And when you have some structure to it, when you're being much more deliberate about the questions you're asking, it is easier to make clips, because the downside of doing it the way I do it is, like, we're just kind of crossing our fingers and hoping that Tiffany or Tiffany's guest says something really good and intelligent that we can share on TikTok. If you don't have the structure, it's just luck of the draw. But if you do, then, it's so much easier. And don't underestimate how much work goes into planning a podcast. There's a reason I do it mine the way I do it. It's less work on my end, but
yeah.
it's also like seat of the pants,
Well, I tell people like with us, so we do a 4-month contract. So from the time they sign that contract till the 4 months is up, we have 303 steps in the process. We have 60 something people in our team, and only 7 or 8 of them sell the product. So we're not a marketing team, or we're not a sales team with a marketing agency tagged onto it. We are a marketing company with, a sales team out there basically just responding to the different ways that people are reaching out to us through email, through social, through, things that they find online, podcasts that they listen to and watch. So, yeah, I mean, you've got to understand having that structure and putting that in place. That's the driver. Like, having a plan, having a ideal client. So like for us, we're like, okay, you want divorce. Do you want like, kind of like middle of the road divorces? You're probably going to do like, 5K to 7K for a retainer. You're probably going to, end up do 12, 15K. Are you looking for more like, higher assets and custody, ugliness? Like, what are you really looking for here? And then we speak to the specifics so that we can create long tail searches. How do I keep the boat in a divorce? Well, if you have a 3-minute segment on a podcast, Google, Gemini now, and really anything out there, if you're directly answering a question like that in a local, relevant, trusted source, now all of a sudden you've got a huge leg up in getting to that person and answering that specific question. And guess what? It goes from, well, how much are you, to how do I make sure that's my attorney? Because that attorney works with men in their 40s who have high assets, that want the boat, that, want more than weekend custody. I want joint, like, and the more granular you can become with your content, the more you can speak to so many distinct situations. And then people feel like, hey, that's the attorney, not just an attorney. That's the attorney that works with people like me. And everybody wants to feel that way now. We all feel like everything's customized to us. Our phone's customized to us. And that's the first thing we look at in the morning. Everything around us. We ask ourselves, what do I want? And then yet in marketing, we're not asking what do they want? What do they need? We're saying, how can I best, represent myself? And a lot of our marketing we try to do with our clients is try to get them to understand that marketing starts at your client, not at your accomplishments. No one's impressed that you won a mock trial in 1987 when you went to X and X top law school. I'm sorry, but no one really cares about that. But what they would care about is if they went on your website and looking for answers, and you had a little 3-minute clip from your podcast that answered the exact question that they had about the situation that they're going through. So that's why content planning is so important versus just kind of winging it and putting it out there. And again, there's time and place and certain ways to do it. But why we really encourage attorneys is because we're building a whole ecosystem off of it. We're not just shouting into the blackness of night, hoping that a client will show up out of it.
I think people underestimate how many different varieties of search that happens. It's not just Google. It's not just search engines. And these days, it's not just ChatGPT. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. My son has like eczema. So I think I was looking up information on how to treat eczema. And I went to my phone, which is what I'm recording on today, opened up Spotify, because that's the app I use, and then clicked podcast, typed in eczema, listened to a few episodes of podcasts that I'm not subscribed to. Like, that was the only episode that I listened to. But they were all like experts talking about this one, like, your money, your life. Eczema isn't, as serious as a legal issue can be, but it's definitely something that has an impact. And then listen to that episode for 20 to 30 minutes. And if it was something like a divorce or a bankruptcy or a car accident, people can find the content they need on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, what other platforms there are. They're not just searching Google, they're searching other places. And that may be the only episode that they ever listen to, but it may be the episode that makes them decide to hire you or hire your law firm. I think where I'm going with this is we tend to think of marketing as where are the big numbers. The big numbers are in Google search. But like sometimes a podcast that gets 12 listens might make you, $12,000. It's incredible
Yep.
how it can work like that.
And that's what I tell people. I'm like, listen, like, would you rather have 1 million hits from people in Bangladesh and maybe get a $2,000 check from YouTube? Or would you rather have 50 local people that fit your ideal client profile, 10 of them call you and 3 or 4 of them hire you? Like, which one of those is of more value? We get so caught up to that. And you talked about like also so many different ways that we search. We also forget about how the social algorithms work now. Like,
Yeah.
if I click on one video about divorce for the next week, I'm going to have videos about divorce in my. So, if people in your market are looking at certain things in their feed and you're not feeding the engines that are going to answer those questions, you're out of that as well. So, that's a whole nother aspect of it. That's why I love the short videos. I forget whose podcast I was on, but Seth Price, maybe. I can't remember the name of his stuff. But anyway, we did an episode together and he's like, so basically, this is just like a content play with a podcast as like the sweetener. And I'm like, yeah, basically, I'm selling them what they want to give them what they need. And that's really kind of my philosophy. It's always been like, sell people what they want, give them what they need, and you'll keep them for a lot longer. If you do just one or the other, it's going to be harder.
For me, from my perspective as a marketer, every marketing plan needs to be like multifaceted. You need video, you need written content, you need audio. I do all three for myself in some form or fashion. And it's so important in the world of AI because like AI videos, they look good, right? But they don't look real. And,
Right.
it's easy to write an article from my POV, but it's much harder to make a video. And so few law firms like actually do. And so few make the commitment to sit down, record, get behind camera. And then the content can be used like you've already talked about in just so many places.
And it's evergreen because they're not talking about like politics and what's going on. Like what you say about a divorce now, chances are in 5 years, it's going to be important. Like we have a lot of people that have come to us and they're like, yeah, like I had a podcast. I did like 3 episodes like 2 years ago, or I did a YouTube video like 3 years ago, or I was on a pod, and they'll be like, but I still get calls and I still get cases and clients from it. So now I'm like, well, what if I did that all the time? And we're like, exactly. Welcome in, come on in, So, the evergreen effect and the fact that it does fit into so many different pieces. To me, that's why I would tell any attorney. And I built mine in a way to be as frictionless as possible for the lawyers because I've worked with them so long. Like if I say, hey, pay me a bunch of money, now here's your homework. They're just like, excuse me, right? They just want to show up, talk, do their thing, and then move on about their day. And then you pick up from there. So the more you can do that, like that's what video allows you to do. It allows you to come in, be yourself, talk, stay in your place of expertise, and then geeky marketing people like me and Tiffany, we can then take and chop it up and do what we need with it and put it where it needs to go so that it benefits you as much as possible.
What advice do you give to attorney? I mean, honestly, it sounds like you solved the problem by like drafting their content for them. But like, has an attorney ever said to you, like, I'm too boring to be on camera, or I'm not cool enough, or just
Yeah, we hear that a lot, but here's the thing. These podcasts are not for mass consumption. They're for certain people at certain times with certain problems in certain places. And so what we tell them is, okay, Mr. or Miss Attorney, you've been bragging to me forever that if I could just get them across the desk for me, I would close them at 80%. So we try to emulate that, right? With the host that is a professional host that some of them have worked like on sports channels, CNN, they've been hosting and doing interviews forever. And so we put that professional person in there that has that conversation with them. And all the attorney has to do is just what they do every day, which is sit there and talk about, oh, well, when this happens, typically we do this and we do this. So it doesn't matter if you're interesting. It matters if you answer their questions clearly and assuage their fears and give them clarity. You could be the most boring person in the world, but for 90 seconds, if you say exactly what I need in that 90 seconds to answer that question, I don't care that you're boring. People don't buy attorneys based on their personality per se. They choose their attorneys based on a desired result. So if you show me that you're competent, confident, and capable of handling, I don't care if you're not going to like do a little song and dance and be funny and emote well and all the things that you need to do well to be entertaining when you're podcasting.
And there's definitely still an element of I saw it on TV or I saw it on video because To your average person, like the fact that I have a podcast is really impressive to my friends and family until, I tell them like, it's like me on Zoom, I try to minimize it for myself. But like, but
Don't
it's
do that to yourself,
impressive.
Tiffany. You put the work in. Like it's there.
Yeah.
Like never minimize anything that you do.
I don't know. That's my fault a little bit. But like, from outside, it is difficult. And it's very impressive when you've never done anything like that. I'm thrilled to talk to somebody that I've seen speak on stage once or seen in a YouTube video once. They're a celebrity to me. And that's what like you can be to people who need you the most, people looking for the information that you give. We kind of touched on this and you mentioned like social media a little bit. I don't know how much you talk about this, but how did the podcast help with like AGO, AI visibility, or PR? I guess that is my question.
Well, two ways. One is, they in the podcasts themselves now index pretty well. So like I do a lot of podcast appearances. And so I'm always like, you Google and it's like, oh, the last 4 podcast appearances. But even your shorts and reels index, especially through LinkedIn. So there's a lot of indexing through that. So being able to, use these shorter videos and use this content to then, index in through the social media outlets. That is the benefit because then what we do is we also take and we create either a blog or an FAQ page or some sort of combination of the two with the video itself. And we do 2 to 3 pages of content that we put on the client's website as well. So now it's, content on their site that's repurposed that, has been rewritten. So that helps with that. So now you're taking and you've got a piece of content that you spoke it once, then it went out on audio, it went out on video, then it got broken up, it got put on social, then it got broken down, it got put on your website, then it got put on, a streaming, because now, hopefully within the next 2-3 months, our clients are going to be able to say, oh yeah, I have a podcast. It's also a television show on, LPN Answers, which is a streaming legal television app that you could download off of Amazon and Roku and all of those places. It's cachet along with substance is what you can do with this kind of content is you can just keep stacking it. And listen, I didn't make this up. Like Gary Vee's been saying for how long? You take a video and then you chop it up and then you put it here, and then you put it there, and then, so like I'm not claiming anything original. I'm just kind of taking it in a new context and like kind of making it a little more formal because I used to think, well, I can't afford to have a cameraman follow me around everywhere I go. And every smart thing I say to a kid on the corner ends up on, YouTube. I can't afford that. But in a session like this, half hour, an hour to 2 hours structured, half hour used per month, you can be recorded and then stack that content. So there is a tremendous advantage to it.
And I'll just speak to some of the attorneys who follow me who brought this up to me before, but it takes some time to get used to seeing yourself on camera. I still struggle with it. I actually have a bad habit of not watching my videos. I just hope they're good. People tell me, one way or another. It's something that everyone has to learn. Like if you're kind of feeling that tribulation, like just being able to watch yourself and sit with it and take notes and learn what to say next time, or if you want to change anything at all. And so like it's kind of intimidating, I guess, but like something like YouTube Shorts, for example. YouTube Shorts I see do really well for attorneys. They just stack up the views. They live a long time. And by live, all the views don't happen just at the beginning. They seem to sustain and continually get views. And so it's really cool. And yet, like, I don't hear a ton of people talking about YouTube Shorts. It's all, for me, it's Instagram and TikTok is what I hear more about. But there are just so many little opportunities that you can take advantage of, with video as long as you're making video. And, just getting there, signing up for a program, recording, some stuff and having somebody take it over for you. I'm actually talking to somebody about taking over my podcast just because if you want to do it and grow it quickly, it always helps to have somebody in your corner for sure.
We need to have a conversation offline because there's a whole different side of, like, I have about 25 shows that are not attorneys for attorneys. So my first channel, like Steve Fretzen, I do his show, Delisi Friday, if you know her. I do her show. Carrie Barrett, if you know her, she's the camera lady on Camera Credibility or something. I do her show. So I do a number of shows from our industry to attorneys where people just came to me and they're like, hey, can you help me? And I was like, well, sure. And then like, some of the agencies like Above the Bar, we do theirs and then they send clients our way. So there's a number of like agencies and people that we work with because we have this ecosystem. I have 50,000 opted in daily email readers. On Friday, like, we send out one of our shows to them and say, hey, check this out. We're dedicating a whole channel, LPN Life, which is all shows just for attorneys. So, it's something that we're trying to build something that is more than just, hey, we're a podcast production company. We're trying to build an ecosystem that if you serve attorneys, you can come in and be in front of tens of thousands of them. If you are an attorney, you can come in and be in front of hundreds, if not thousands, of highly qualified local opportunities. That's really our goal, more than just like, hey, give me money to produce it. Let me throw it out there and good luck to you. Like it's all, and listen, it is a ton of work. From what I can tell, if you like you add an intro, outro, edit, do the stuff you need to do, even when you get good at it, an episode is going to take you 6 to 10 hours of your personal time. That's not including the time it takes to get good at it. Most attorneys don't want to spend, 20 hours a month making their podcast on the side when they could spend, an hour a month sitting down and then having that effort multiplied. And whether it's me or there's other companies that do what I do, I'm not the only turnkey podcast kind of company out there, but I'd like to think we're the only ones that do it the way we do it. So, and you were talking earlier about, if you don't mind, I'd like to just mention this real quick. I know we're a bit over, but you were talking earlier about how you just don't know how your podcast impacts people, right? So last year I did 99 podcast guest spots. Now I had a goal of 100, and on December 31st, I had 5 stacked, and I was like, that one doesn't quite fit, and they haven't published yet. And I was like, I'll only do 99 podcasts. And now I'll tell you why, because I want the name of that, like whatever it's going to be, video series or studies, going to be something to the effect, if you're having pod problems, I feel bad for you, son. I did 99 podcasts, but a pitch ain't one. So that's going to be my series about being on 99 spots. But I talk about business. So I live on an island in Belize, and there's about 30,000 people here on the island. And the guy who's my butcher, the meat guy, I go into his store and he's like expanded out. Now he's got like a full grocery store. And so I'm talking to him and his wife, and I was like, oh, what made you guys decide? And they're like, well, we're trying to grow our business, and, we're like learning more about business and doing things like that. And so they're telling me this and that. I just casually said to him, I said, well, I said, I mostly talk a lot about attorneys. I said, but I do a lot of podcasting about business and about margins and da-da-da-da. And he's like, oh, I know, you're my business coach. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, I listen to I don't understand half of what you say because you talk like really geeky stuff. He's like, but the business stuff you talk about, like, I really enjoy it. And like, you're my business coach. And I was just like, so you just don't know. Like, even people that you come in contact with all the time might be listening, reading. Here's the thing, like with lawyers, they are not ones who are going to do a ton of unless they're marketing in some other way themselves for a separate product. For the most part, they're not liking, commenting. Like, they're very much what I call creepers, right? And so like, I look at my content and I'll be like, man, this isn't moving. But then I'll see the impressions and I'll see it's like 35% law firm owners, 40% 1 to 10, whatever. So my exact ICP. Every once in a while, it's sometimes more often, they'll come in fits and spurts. I'll just get this like, nothing in my posts, but the guy will say, hey, that one podcast that you did 2 weeks ago, I really like that comment where you said this and that. I really agree with that. Or like, they'll literally inbox me. So you don't know who's listening. You don't know who's getting access to this content. And you don't know the effect. I like to call it cumulative trust. I don't know if I heard it. I'm not saying I made it up. But the effect of cumulative compounding trust, when you're offering value in your marketplace, answering questions, assuaging fears, making yourself available, then all of a sudden, when it comes time, they're not calling the guy who's the best PI guy this side of the P Coast, right? They're calling the guy who explained to them what happens when you get hit. And it's partially your fault, but they've been granular. So don't discount the opportunity to speak into what you think is nothingness and know that it will come back to you in dividends over time. And I think that's probably the hardest thing, because a lot of attorneys have gotten used to, here you go, Mr. Google, here's $10,000, get me 1,000 hits, which, yeah, we'll just use that number, but get me 1,000 hits, give me 78 phone calls, give me 4 cases, right? 5% conversion, blah, blah, blah. It's about right. 3 to 5 is typically what I've heard off of the, that sort of stuff. So they would much rather do that and hand over 10,000 that they're never going to get back the majority of it than hand over $1,000 or $2,000 a month and then build. And then like 6-8 months down the road, they're getting much higher results, much better quality, much higher conversion, much better cases and much better clients. It's unfortunately it's just human nature. I'd rather pay now for what I need now than build up something that's going to be cumulatively of much greater benefit to me.
DM, thank you so much for being on the show. I do want to add one thing, because you mentioned attorneys being creepers, and they don't publicly like and comment. And I've noticed this myself. And there's a while I was really down on myself. It's like, why can't I was on LinkedIn talking to attorneys, and I could not get any of them to like my post. I could get a lot of impressions, and I could look and see it was from the legal industry, but like not very many likes, and it was embarrassing. And then I just shifted my strategy. Instead of talking to attorneys, I just started talking to marketers about attorneys, and that took off. So now I'm getting the engagement I need from the marketers, and then the attorneys are still looking and sometimes messaging me on the sly, being like, "You're not talking about me, are you?" So it's kind of funny.
I used to be the same way, but I have somebody on my team that acts in my inbox and talks to the attorneys when we connect with them. And, that's our second, third biggest mover in our whole thing. And we probably have about 10 relationships that have sent several clients and then one-off clients. So it's definitely been a big mover for us. And it's funny because I'll talk to people who have 4 times the, amount of people and 10 times the amount of engagement than me. And I'll just be like, oh, how's things? They're like, well, I haven't got a client from this yet, but it's fun. And I'm just like, yeah, I got 3 clients last week, so I don't know what to tell you. So I think sometimes, we were talking about, understanding the ultimate statistic is not likes, it's not shares, it's not comments, it's not impressions, it's clients. And when you take this approach of, for example, unless I am going through a divorce and I probably already have somebody in place, I'm probably not going to like and comment on your divorce thing, but I might watch it, right? Bankruptcy, same thing. Criminal, same thing. A lot of legal professions aren't going to get the vanity metrics, but if they look at the end result of who comes through the door and why they came through the door, they're going to see a big shift from it. So that's the other thing I think they expect. It's listen, you're not Logan Paul or, Dude Perfect throwing a basketball 300 yards, into the hoop. You're a lawyer talking about divorce. So you're probably not going to get 50 likes, 30 comments, and 20 shares, but you might get a few people call you and hire you. Which one's worth more?
Very true. Very true. DM, thank you so much for being on the show. We did go over, since I am remote, I was like, oh, we'll probably go 30 minutes, but instead we went the full time and 2 minutes over that. So it was great talking with you. I really enjoyed it. Where do you want people to look you up, learn more about you?
First, I want them to go to LinkedIn. I want them to like all my posts, comment on all my posts, and share all my posts. I only post 3 times a day every day, so it's not a big ask, guys. No, LinkedIn, if you want to actually connect with me and have a little bit of a chat with me, then that's the place, is LinkedIn. If you're kind of okay, what's this company all about? You can go to thelegalpodcastnetwork.com. And we just launched, it's kind of in the background, the authoritypodcastnetwork.com. And that's just because we have about 10 clients in our ecosystem that have nothing to do with the legal field. And they were just I don't care. I still want to use your program. So we're kind of breaking that out. So we have a place, an ecosystem to build for that. So those 2 websites, and then LinkedIn, those are the best ways to reach me.
I'll definitely have to talk to you later, because Daniela, who edits my podcast, she's my marketing specialist. She's probably crossing her fingers. She's like, yes, Tiffany, take him up on that. But you'll definitely have to talk to you too. Yeah. Thanks again. And thanks everyone for listening. We will talk to you all soon.